Welcome, friends. This is Pastor Bob, and uh, thank you for joining us. It's time for our midweek message. And, we've been talking about on Sundays the Beatitudes, which are right at the beginning of Matthew. Jesus has his time in the wilderness. And immediately after that, he starts summoning apostles. And then this sermon comes out right in chapter 5 that sets the tone for the entire rest of the book. And it's a beautiful sermon, probably the pivotal teaching, monumental teaching, I would call it. All of Jesus's teaching were monumental, but this is the one that really captures the tone, the meaning, and the essence of his ministry and his teaching throughout the whole rest of the book. And what's interesting is right after that, he turns to his audience and says, "You are the salt of the earth. But if salt loses its saltiness, how can it be made salty again? It is no longer good for anything except to be thrown out and trampled underfoot." What's interesting about that is, today we're surrounded by salt. Matter of fact, we're told to quit eating so much salt. But in the ancient world, salt was rare and expensive. In some cultures, it was even a mode of currency. Salt, as you know, makes everything taste a little better. At least I think so. I'm one of those people that uses too much salt. I'm the kind of guy that puts salt on ramen noodles, if that gives you any idea of how much I like salt. But in the ancient world, it was rare, and it was widely understood that it made things better. And that's our job as Christians. We're to be the salt of the earth, to make it a better place in our thought, our actions, our words, and our deeds. See, a lot of Christians think we're supposed to come here to consume, that the church is supposed to wait on us, and then we just get to heaven, and that's the end goal. That's the end of all of our responsibilities as being a good Christian and a good follower of Jesus. But actually, our job is to bring a little bit of heaven down to earth. We say it every Sunday in the Lord's Prayer, "Let it be done on earth as it is in heaven." That's not saying to God, "Hey, God, would you let things on earth be done as it is in heaven?" That's us. Let's bring a little heaven to earth in all the things we do, in our choices, in our thoughts, in our acts, and in our deeds. And then the next question is obviously, well, what does that mean? Well, that's where becoming a deeper Christian and studying the Bible, understanding God's will. What does God envision the world to be? When Jesus preached about this kingdom that he was ushering in, what does that look like? What are we supposed to be bringing in? And so our job as Christians is to make the better world a better place, to be salt by ushering in this kingdom that Jesus preached about, to help it become realized in our thoughts and our choices and our actions and our deeds, namely a place of love, a place of where people are growing in their faith, a place where people care for one another, so on and so forth. The only way to get a full picture of that is to read Matthew, Mark, Luke, and John, and then, of course, the epistles. And then through that, you'll get a really good image of this kingdom that Jesus wants us to usher in. And that's our job. Our job's not just to consume or to be a customer at church, but to be the church, to be salt and light. Matter of fact, that leads to the next part. He continues, "You are the light of the world. A town built on a hill cannot be hidden. Neither do people put a light underneath a bowl. Instead, they put it on a stand, and it gives light to everyone in the house. In the same way, let your light shine before others, that they may see your glorious deeds, which glorify your Father in heaven." See, we're called also to be a light. And what does that mean? Well, God, all throughout the Old Testament, has said to the Israeli people, "You are a light into the world." Well, what do they primarily do? Well, they live primarily, and I don't mean to be critical, but this is what Jesus is talking about here. They lived pretty much as isolationists. They were a holiness club. You were either in or you were out. They were, if you can imagine, this group, the Hebrew people in this land called the Levant, Judah, Samaria, Galilee. That's the three regions in the middle period. Today we say Jerusalem. It's a very small piece of land. Pretty insignificant. Doesn't have oil. Not the best place to grow crops. Yet God commanded them to be a light into the whole world. And that means they'd have to get out from under that bowl. It's not just a club. They need to get out and spread that light, to share that light. Matter of fact, Jesus compares the church as being put on a hill so that our light can be shine for everyone. And when Jesus says everyone, that means everyone. That doesn't mean just people who vote a particular way or have a particular skin color. That light is for the world. Matter of fact, Jesus says that God sends the rain and the sun on the wicked and the sinners alike. Our job is to bring light to the world. The good and the bad, that's God's job to sort out. That's not our job. Too many Christians try to make that our job. That's not our job. We're to be the salt and light to the world. Everyone we meet, we're supposed to bring down a little bit of the kingdom and give it to them. People should see the kingdom in us. People should say, you know what? He's an attorney, but he's also someone bringing in the kingdom. He's a plumber, but he's also someone that follows Jesus and is bringing in the kingdom. It's not something that we just take in and keep to ourselves. That was one of the things that Jesus was so adamant about, that we had to break the bounds of regionalism and club type thinking and get beyond that to spring the message of the gospel and to build the kingdom to the world. And that's exactly what happened. For those of you that like history, the temple was torn down in 70 AD. That's roughly 30 years after Jesus was crucified. So no more central place of Jewish religion. Then in 135 AD, the Romans come in, conquer Jerusalem, and then scatter them among the Roman Empire. Now, I'm not saying God did that or didn't do that, but what that did was that it propelled the Christian movement, which was already spreading. It had gone into Egypt. It had gone westward almost all the way to Spain. It had already started beginning to spread like Jesus had commanded, but that really gave it a push because Christianity could no longer be localized. It can no longer be a club. It can no longer be a holy huddle. It had no more center anymore. But God didn't want it to have one. God says you're to be going to the world to be salt and light. See, that's a powerful message. I think there's something inherently tribal in us, and we're really seeing it today with political and social divisions because people are getting into their little clubs of like-minded thinking. You see it a lot on the internet. And then within these clubs of like-minded thinking, they pat each other on the back and say things that they all agree on, and it kind of makes them feel good. Some call it confirmation bias, whatever you want to call it. It doesn't really matter. But my point is there's something that feels good about being part of a club or a group, and I don't know that there's anything wrong with that. I like being part of a church. That's my tribe. Hey, I like being part of a family. Hey, that's my tribe. There's nothing wrong with that. But as Christians, we're called to be salt and light beyond our tribe, beyond our club. We're supposed to be expanding that tribe. We're supposed to be going further. And if every Christian did that, what would the world look like? If we all took seriously our little piece of bringing in the kingdom, what would the world look like? What would our towns look like, or our cities? Or heck, let's look at a smaller level. What about our households or maybe our neighborhoods? So our job as Christians, and Jesus reminds us, we're to be the salt of the earth. And he's got a little warning here. If it loses its saltiness, it's no longer good for anything except to be thrown out and trampled underfoot. So we don't want to lose that saltiness. We don't want to lose that light. We want to share it. All right, I hope that was a bit of encouragement to you. Be a little bit of salt and light to everyone you meet today. All right, thank you.